The smell hit me before the sight did. That faint, sour dampness you get when fabric has been wet too long. It shouldn't have been there. My house always smelled like lavender polish and lemon candles. But that day when I opened the front door at 4:30, the air felt different. Heavy, stale, wrong. The day I came home and found my mother's betrayal sitting in my living room, I stopped being quiet. Watch till the end, you won't believe what silence can do. For a second I thought maybe a pipe had leaked. Then my eyes adjusted to the dim light slanting through the blinds and I froze. My living room didn't look like my living room anymore. Where my ivory sofa used to sit, the one I saved for months to buy, the one I was proud of, stood a sunken brown couch with torn arms and dark patches on the cushions. The matching rug I'd chosen carefully last spring was gone. The elegant coffee table replaced by a crooked, water-stained one that looked rescued from the curb. I just stood there, briefcase still in my hand, heart hammering quietly in my chest. I remember whispering, "No, no, no, this isn't mine." The television was gone too. The shelves were nearly empty, except for a few dusty photo frames and a chipped vase I hadn't seen in years. My throat tightened as I turned slowly, scanning the room. The curtains different, the lamp missing, even the clock on the wall replaced by an old ticking one that used to hang in my mother's kitchen decades ago. That's when I heard footsteps. "Mom." My voice cracked slightly. "Where's my furniture?" She came from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel, as calm as if nothing had happened. "Oh, you're home early," she said, like she was greeting me after a grocery trip. "I thought you said you'd be working late." "I finished early," I said, still staring at the couch. "Where's my living room, Mom?" She sighed, that long, patient sigh she used to give me when I was a teenager. "Honey, you don't need all that fancy furniture. You live alone. It's wasted here. Your sister just moved and she could really use something nice for once." I blinked. The words didn't even fit together in my head. "You gave away my furniture?" She nodded lightly. "It's family, sweetheart. What's yours is ours. Besides, I replaced it for you." She motioned toward the decaying couch as if it were a kind gesture. "This still has some life in it. You don't need everything to be brand new." For a moment I couldn't speak. My body felt cold though the house was warm. I kept staring at that couch, the stains, the smell, and something inside me shifted. All I could manage was, "Did you even ask me?" She smiled, that small, dismissive smile that used to end every argument. "I knew you'd understand eventually. You've always been too attached to material things." Material things. The furniture I'd bought after my divorce when I was trying to rebuild a space that felt like mine again. Every cushion, every color, every piece was part of that healing, and she'd given it away like it was clutter. I set my purse down slowly. My heart was pounding but my voice stayed calm. "Where's my receipt folder?" I asked. She frowned. "Why? What receipts?" "The ones for the furniture," I said, walking toward my office. My heels tapped sharply on the wooden floor. "You didn't throw them out, did you?" "Don't start this," she called from behind me. "You're making a scene for no reason." But I was already pulling open drawers. The folder was still there, thick with invoices, photos from the day of delivery, and the insurance documents I'd filed when I bought the set. I'd kept them for warranty, but in that moment they looked like something else entirely. Protection. Proof. I closed the folder carefully and placed it on my desk. "Mom," I said without turning around, "you had no right." "I raised you," she snapped suddenly, her voice changing tone. "Everything you have came from me one way or another." I turned then slowly and looked at her, really looked. Her face was harder than I remembered. She stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, defiant, like she was daring me to fight her. "You gave it to her?" I asked again quietly. "All of it. She needed it more than you do. You're alone. She has a family. Think about someone other than yourself for once." The room went silent except for that old ticking clock on the wall. Each tick sounded like a dare. "I see," I said finally. My voice didn't shake. "And what did she give you in return?" Her eyes flickered just for a moment, that split second where guilt tries to hide behind pride. "Nothing," she said quickly. "She's my daughter too. You make it sound like a crime." I didn't answer. Instead, I walked back to the living room and sat down on that moldy couch. The fabric cracked under my weight. A small puff of dust rose into the air. I looked around at what was left. The empty corners, the peeling table, the way light from the window fell unevenly on the bare floor. Everything I loved about this space had been taken, stripped away and replaced with junk. Do you even hear yourself? I asked quietly. You broke into my house, took what wasn't yours, and now you're defending it. Her tone softened again. You're overreacting. We're family. I'll talk to your sister. Maybe she can give something back. Something. That word settled deep. I don't want it back, I said. Not from her. Not from you. She looked at me confused. Then what do you want? I smiled. A small, polite smile, the kind that hides sharp edges. I just wanted to see how far you'd go. Her brows furrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, standing. You've already shown me enough. I walked to the door and opened it. You should go home, Mom. It's getting late. She hesitated, clearly startled by my calmness. For a woman who expected screaming, tears, or begging, my silence unsettled her more than anything. I did this for you, she muttered, stepping outside. I know, I said softly. That's the problem. When the door closed behind her, the house felt different again. Not because it was empty, but because I finally saw it for what it was. A stage. A crime scene dressed as kindness. I sat back down, hands folded in my lap, staring at the faded floral print on the cushion beside me. My pulse steadied. The anger drained into something colder, cleaner. Focus. She thought she'd outsmarted me, but she'd forgotten something important. I kept everything: receipts, insurance copies, delivery photos. I even had a few old emails from the furniture store saved in my inbox. She believed I was careless because I trusted her. She was wrong. From the window, I could see her car reversing slowly down the driveway. For a moment, our eyes met, hers full of confidence, mine steady and unreadable. I waited until she drove off before locking the door. Then I went room to room taking notes. The bedroom set was untouched, she hadn't had time. The dining chairs were replaced too, cheap metal legs scraping unevenly against the floor. Even the curtains were gone, replaced by the ones I threw out last spring. I took pictures of everything. Wide shots, close-ups, timestamps visible in the corner. By the time the sun went down, I had over 100 photos saved to my phone. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat in the dark, screen light reflecting off the mug. My house looked sad, almost haunted. But under that sadness, something new was growing. The quiet certainty that this time I wouldn't let it slide. For 62 years, I'd been the understanding one. The one who forgave, who looked the other way, who said family matters more than things. But tonight I saw clearly, family should never mean ownership. I looked around the ruined room and whispered to the silence, all right then. Because somewhere between the smell of mold and the sight of that empty space, a plan had already begun to form. It wasn't loud. It wasn't impulsive. It was precise, like the ticking of that clock on the wall. Each second counting down to the moment they'd realize I wasn't the same woman they'd fooled before. The next time my mother and sister saw me, they wouldn't find a heartbroken daughter. They'd find someone who finally understood that silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. I glanced at the folder on the desk one last time, the corner of a receipt peeking out, and smiled faintly. I didn't need to rush. The evidence would wait, and so would I. Outside, the night deepened, cool air slipping through the cracked window. The moldy couch creaked beneath me, but I stayed there, calm, listening to that steady clock tick toward something inevitable. And that's how it started, not with shouting, not with threats, but with the quiet decision to make them answer for every single thing they thought they could take from me. The night after my mother left, I barely slept. The air in the house still smelled of mold and old fabric, but beneath that was something else, the faint metallic scent of resolve. Every time the clock ticked, I pictured her face when I told her to leave. That confusion. That tiny flicker of fear. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, not yet, but something colder, steadier. When the sun came up, I made coffee and opened my notebook. The same one I used for grocery lists now held something new. Dates, names, and reminders. At the top of the page, I wrote 3 words in neat capital letters. Everything in writing. By 7:30, I was dressed and ready. Not for work, I'd taken the day off. I wore simple clothes, a beige sweater and dark jeans. No makeup. Just a calm, plain face that looked like it had already accepted defeat. I wanted that. It disarmed people. Before leaving, I took one last photo of the couch, the moldy, sagging center of all this, and texted it to my sister with a message. Mom said you needed this more than me. Take care of it. No emojis. No punctuation. just enough to make her wonder if I was angry or plotting. By the time I reached the lawyer's office, I had rehearsed my tone. Polite, measured, precise. I wasn't going to cry or plead. I was going to sound like a woman with documentation. The receptionist smiled when I walked in. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," I said. "With Mr. Dalton. I'm here about a property issue." Inside his office, the blinds were half closed, sunlight cutting across the wooden floor in narrow strips. Mr. Dalton was maybe in his 50s, calm eyes, clean desk. I handed him the folder I'd prepared the night before. The receipts, the photos, the insurance documents, even a printed email from the furniture company confirming delivery to my address. He leafed through everything carefully, nodding once in a while. "You're thorough," he said finally. "I learned that the hard way," I replied. When I told him what happened, I kept my voice level, my hands folded. I didn't mention betrayal or emotions. Just facts. That my mother had entered my home, taken property purchased in my name, and transferred it to another person without consent. He leaned back. "You said she gave it to your sister?" "Yes." "And replaced it with damaged items she likely got from her garage." He made a low sound of disbelief. "You'll need a written statement, photos, and estimated value for everything removed. With this much proof, it's not difficult to file." "Good," I said simply. He studied me a moment longer as if expecting anger. When none came, he smiled faintly. "Most people in your situation are furious. You're calm." I smiled back. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to finish." When I left his office, the air outside felt sharper, like the kind that clears your lungs after a storm. Back home, I made lunch I barely tasted. My phone buzzed twice. Once from my sister, once from Mom. I ignored both. At 3 o'clock, my sister finally sent another message. "Mom said you're upset. Don't make this dramatic. You don't even use that furniture." I read it twice, then smiled. That small, knowing smile that meant nothing good. I typed back, "You're right. I won't use it. But you won't either." Then I deleted the typing bubble before sending. I liked her not knowing what I'd say next. I spent the rest of the afternoon photographing every room again, this time in daylight. Angles, timestamps, labels. I printed them on my home printer, each one slipped into a plastic sleeve. I didn't just want evidence, I wanted control. While the printer hummed, I made a call to my insurance company. I spoke softly, explaining that I needed to verify a claim on missing furniture. They transferred me to a claims officer named Heather, who listened carefully and asked for my policy number. When she said, "We can open a preliminary theft report," I said, "Do that." Her tone changed slightly. "Are you pressing charges against anyone?" "Not yet," I said. "But I want every step documented." I hung up and sat for a while, watching the light fade from the window. Somewhere down the street, a neighbor's wind chime clinked softly in the breeze. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. The kind of peace that comes before you decide to break someone's illusion of control. That night, I cooked dinner like nothing was wrong. Roasted vegetables, a small chicken breast, a glass of water with lemon. I even called my friend Evelyn to talk about her garden and pretended everything was normal. She didn't notice anything off, and that was good. No one should suspect anything yet. But before I went to bed, I did one last thing. I wrote an email to my mother. The subject line read, "Documentation." The message was short. "Mom, please confirm in writing that you removed the living room furniture and gave it to Anna. I need it for my home insurance record. Marlene." I clicked send. She wouldn't think twice about it, she always loved sounding responsible. By morning, I knew I'd have what I needed. The next day, her reply arrived at 8:17 a.m. "Yes, I took it for Anna. It's still in the family. Why are you making a fuss over this? You can come visit and see it whenever you want." I stared at the screen, that familiar cold calm returning. There was proof written in her own words. I printed it, slipped it into the folder, and felt the faintest tremor of satisfaction. Later that afternoon, I went grocery shopping. I wanted to see her, just to watch her when she didn't know she was being watched. At the supermarket, I spotted her by the produce aisle. She was laughing with a neighbor, holding a basket of apples, playing the part of the sweet, generous mother. I pushed my cart past her without saying a word. When she turned and saw me, she smiled brightly, waving like nothing had happened. "Hi, sweetheart," she said. I smiled back. Calm, soft, almost friendly. Mom. How's the house? Did you fix that old couch yet? Not yet, I said. It's growing on me. Her smile faltered just for a heartbeat. He couldn't tell if I meant it. I didn't give her time to ask. I have to go, I said. Busy week. As I walked away, I could feel her eyes following me. That tiny shift, from confidence to uncertainty, was the first ripple. That evening I sat on the couch again typing notes into my phone. Every detail mattered. The date of her email, her tone at the store, the time my sister's message came through. I wasn't just collecting facts anymore. I was building a timeline. Around 10 I heard a car stop outside. I peeked through the blinds. My mother's sedan. The porch light flicked on automatically. She sat in the car for a moment before stepping out holding a small box. I opened the door before she could knock. Oh, she said startled. You're awake. I usually am when people show up uninvited, I said quietly. She frowned. I brought back a few of your things. Some photo frames and books I think were yours. I let her in but didn't move aside. You can put them there. She hesitated then set the box on the floor. I don't like how you're acting, Marlene. This distance between us, it's not healthy. I agree, I said. Boundaries rarely are healthy for the people who break them. Her mouth opened slightly but no sound came out. I added softly, you might want to tell Anna to take good care of that furniture. It'll be leaving her house soon. She blinked. What are you talking about? I smiled, gentle, polite but unmistakably final. You'll find out. Her expression shifted, eyes narrowing, trying to gauge if I was bluffing. But my calm unnerved her. She gathered her purse and muttered something about ungrateful children before heading back out. When she drove off, I closed the door and finally exhaled. My hands were steady. My pulse was slow. That's when I realized, the anger was gone. I wasn't furious anymore. I was focused. And focus, I'd learned, was far more dangerous than rage. Over the next few days I went about my routine as if nothing had changed. Work errands, small talk with neighbors. But beneath it all, my plan kept growing quietly, just like mold on that couch. My smile became my armor. Every time someone mentioned my mother or sister, I smiled. Every time my phone buzzed with their messages, I smiled. Every time I saw that empty space where my coffee table once stood, I smiled again. Because they thought my silence meant surrender. But soon they'd learn what it really meant. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was waiting. Waiting for the paper, the envelope, the seal that would turn their smug laughter into whispers. Each morning I checked my mailbox like someone waiting for a letter from fate itself. And when it came, thick, cream-colored, stamped with the county clerk's seal, I felt the weight of it before I even opened it. I didn't rush. I made tea first, stirred in honey, sat at my kitchen table and slid my finger under the flap. The smell of ink and paper rose up. Inside was the legal notice, folded neatly in triplicate, my name printed across the top in crisp black letters. Plaintiff, Marlene Waters. My hands didn't shake. I read every line slowly, my lawyer's words turned official by the court. It was simple, clean, devastating. Unauthorized removal and transfer of personal property, civil claim, formal summons to appear. When I placed it back in the envelope, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because this time my family would answer to me, not the other way around. That afternoon I called Mr. Dalton. It's ready, I said. Already filed, he replied. Delivery is scheduled for tomorrow. Certified mail and hand-served copies both. You wanted that, remember? Yes, I said quietly. I want her to sign for it. He hesitated. Most people have the sheriff's deputy deliver. You're sure you want it personal? I'm sure, I said. She deserves to hold it in her own hands. After hanging up, I opened the window. Outside, the neighborhood kids were riding bikes, laughter echoing down the street. The ordinary world continued as if nothing monumental was about to happen. I wondered if my mother could feel it. The shift in the air, the storm approaching quietly under clear skies. The next morning, I dressed like it was any other day. Navy blouse, silver earrings, hair pinned neatly back. Then I drove to work, calm, collected, almost humming. At 10:15 my phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer's assistant. Delivery completed at 10:07 a.m. Both recipients confirmed. I read it 3 times then set the phone down. My pulse slowed instead of speeding up. That was the strangest part, the peace that followed power. At lunchtime, I allowed myself a small reward: coffee from the bakery across the street. The woman behind the counter asked how my day was. Productive, I said with a smile. By evening, the messages started. First, a missed call from my mother. Then another from my sister. Then another: call me back right now, this isn't funny. I didn't answer. At 8:30, the doorbell rang. I knew before checking the peephole. She always came in person when she lost control. Mom. I opened the door only halfway. She stood there clutching the envelope, cheeks flushed, hair messy like she'd been pacing. What is this? She demanded. What are you doing? Kept my tone polite. It's called accountability. Account? Are you insane? She shouted. You filed a lawsuit against your own family? Over furniture. Not over furniture, I said evenly. Over theft. Her mouth opened but no sound came out for a moment. I can't believe you'd humiliate us like this. The whole neighborhood. I didn't tell the neighborhood, I interrupted softly. The court did. She froze. The color drained from her face. That was the moment she realized this wasn't a bluff. Behind her, headlights appeared. My sister's car. Of course. She jumped out, slamming the door, storming toward the porch. What the hell is this, Marlene? She snapped, waving her copy of the summons. Mom's crying, I'm getting calls from her friends. Then you should have thought about that before taking what wasn't yours, I said. You're seriously dragging this into court? Over furniture you never even sat on. I looked her dead in the eye. Funny. I remember sitting on it just fine before you stole it. The silence that followed felt heavy. Even the crickets outside stopped for a second. Get out of my driveway, I said quietly. Both of you. My mother's voice trembled. Marlene, please. Go home, Mom, I said, softer but firm. Next time we meet, it'll be in front of a judge. I closed the door slowly. No slam, no drama. Just finality. They didn't know I was listening from behind the curtain. She's lost it, my sister hissed. Don't say that, my mother whispered. She's serious. I saw the lawyer's name. So what? We'll talk to him. We'll fix it. She has proof, Anna, my mother said, voice shaking. Emails, receipts. I wrote her a message last week admitting. You did what? Their voices faded as they got into the car. Then silence. When the taillights disappeared, I finally let myself breathe. The next few days unfolded like a quiet play. My lawyer called to confirm the case number. The court clerk scheduled the hearing. Neighbors started glancing at me differently, polite, curious, maybe even a little cautious. I didn't care. On Wednesday, I ran into Evelyn while trimming my rose bushes. You look calm, she said. I am, I answered. It's funny how peace shows up once you stop pretending to be okay with disrespect. She smiled knowingly, though she had no idea what I meant. That evening, I received an email from Mr. Dalton. Defendants have contacted our office requesting settlement discussion. I didn't reply right away. I made myself tea, turned on the lamp, and read the message again. They were scared, good. But scared wasn't enough. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted them to feel what I felt that first day walking into my ruined living room. Disbelief, shame, and loss. The following Saturday, I visited my sister's neighborhood. I parked down the street from her house and just watched. Through the living room window, I could see my furniture. My ivory sofa, my glass coffee table, my rug. Everything looked wrong there. Too bright. Too loud. For a moment, anger flared, hot and sharp, but it cooled almost immediately. Because now those pieces weren't symbols of loss anymore. They were evidence. I took out my phone, zoomed in, and clicked 3 photos. One wide, one mid-range, one close-up with the timestamp visible. The lens caught a reflection of sunlight across the glass table. Almost poetic, like justice itself signing the picture. When I drove away, I didn't look back. That evening, another call came from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. This is Officer Leroy with the county police, the man said. Ma'am, I just wanted to confirm a property inspection request filed through your attorney. We'll be verifying the inventory next week. My heart gave one strong thump. Thank you, officer. I'll be home. After hanging up, I looked around my living room. The moldy couch still sat there like a reminder of everything taken, but I didn't hate it anymore. It had served its purpose. It had witnessed every plan, every call, every quiet victory. Monday arrived. I was watering the porch plants when the patrol car pulled up next door. My mother's sedan was already in the driveway. I watched from a distance as the officer approached her with a clipboard. Even from across the hedge, I could see the way her hands trembled as she signed. My sister came out moments later, pale, avoiding my eyes. When the officer walked back toward his car, he paused, nodding politely to me. "Ma'am," he said. "Thank you," I replied. My mother turned, tears glinting in her eyes, anger twisted with humiliation. He mouthed something, maybe "Why are you doing this?" But I didn't answer. I just smiled. That same quiet, soft smile that started it all. That night the phone rang again. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through, trembling. "Please, let's talk. We'll give it all back. I'll make Anna apologize. Just stop this before it goes further." I listened twice, then deleted it. They still didn't understand. This wasn't about getting the furniture back anymore. It was about respect, the kind you can't demand, only earn through consequence. 2 days later, my lawyer emailed again. Court date confirmed for the 28th. Defendants notified. They've hired counsel. I closed the laptop slowly. Outside, wind brushed the trees, scattering a few early leaves across the yard. The sound reminded me of that day I first found the moldy couch. Quiet chaos, the kind that looks harmless until you notice what it's replaced. I poured myself a drink of water, stood by the window and whispered, "Almost there." For the first time in months I slept soundly. No dreams, no doubts. Just the deep, steady calm of a woman who'd finally stopped asking for fairness, and started creating it. The next morning that same calm lingered, not light or joyful but heavy and settled like fog that refuses to lift. I got dressed slowly in the navy dress I hadn't worn since the hearing notice arrived. The fabric was soft, steady against my skin. Today wasn't about victory. It was about truth, and truth has its own temperature. I left the house early, even though the courthouse was only 15 minutes away. I wanted the drive, the quiet hum of tires on asphalt, the rhythm of the world waking up. The streets looked ordinary. Sprinklers watering lawns, people walking dogs, kids waiting for school buses. No one knew that today my mother and sister would stand in front of a judge because of me. When I pulled into the courthouse parking lot, the clock on the dashboard read 8:42 a.m. The hearing was at 9. I sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. My palms were dry. My heartbeat was even. Inside, the courthouse smelled faintly of paper, coffee, and floor polish. The marble floor gleamed under fluorescent lights. Mr. Dalton waved when he saw me in the hallway. "Morning, Marlene," he said quietly. "Morning," I answered. He held out a folder. "Everything's ready. They're already here." I looked past him and saw them, my mother and Anna, standing near the benches outside courtroom 3B. My mother wore a pale blue suit that looked like it belonged to someone gentler. Anna had her arms folded, phone in hand, trying to appear indifferent. When my mother turned and saw me, her lips parted slightly. I expected anger, maybe tears. Dad, she looked smaller. Like the years had caught up all at once. I walked toward them. "Morning, Mom." "Anna." Anna rolled her eyes. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" I smiled softly. "Enjoying isn't the word." My mother spoke then, voice trembling but proud. "We don't need to do this, Marlene. We can talk privately. Settle it at home like a family." I looked at her for a long moment. "We stopped being a family the day you broke into my house." Her face tightened. "I didn't break in." "Then how did you get in?" I asked quietly. She hesitated. I saw it, the flicker of guilt in her eyes. "You gave me a spare key." "I took that key back last year," I said. "You made a copy." Her shoulders sank. She didn't deny it. Mr. Dalton cleared his throat gently. "We should go in." Inside the courtroom the air was cool and still. Rows of wooden benches faced a raised platform where the judge's chair stood. Sunlight filtered through high windows, dust motes turning in the light. I took my seat beside Mr. Dalton. Across the aisle my mother and sister whispered hurriedly to their attorney, a younger man with too much confidence and not enough tact. He glanced at me once, perhaps expecting outrage, but I met his gaze with quiet composure. When the judge entered, everyone rose. She was a woman in her 60s, steady voice, sharp eyes. I wondered if she'd ever had daughters of her own. The hearing began. Mr. Dalton presented the case with calm precision. Invoices, insurance papers, dated photographs, even the email where my mother admitted giving away the furniture. Each document landed like a soft hammer, not loud but impossible to ignore. When the judge asked my mother to respond, her voice trembled. "Your Honor, this has all been blown out of proportion. I didn't steal anything. It stayed within the family. My younger daughter needed it, and Marlene has more than enough." The judge raised a hand. "Mrs. Waters, please answer directly. Did you remove these items from your daughter's home without permission?" My mother looked down. "I thought I had permission." "Did she say yes?" Silence. The judge's pen tapped once on her desk. "That will be a no." Anna leaned forward, whispering something to their lawyer. He stood and said, "Your Honor, my clients are willing to return the property immediately to avoid further conflict." Mr. Dalton smiled politely. "That would be restitution, not dismissal." The judge nodded. "Correct." I sat there, hands folded, listening to words that sounded both foreign and deeply familiar. Restitution, ownership, consent. They echoed years of conversations we'd never had. Every apology that came too late. Every boundary she crossed because she thought motherhood excused it. When it was my turn to speak, the judge asked, "Ms. Waters, do you wish to make a statement?" I stood, smoothing my dress. "Yes, Your Honor. I only want what's mine returned, and acknowledgement that it was wrong to take it. This isn't about money or furniture. It's about respect." The courtroom went quiet. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. My mother stared at me, eyes glassy. She whispered something I couldn't hear. Anna turned her face away. When I sat back down, my knees felt weak, but not from fear, from release. Years of silence condensed into one simple truth. The judge looked at my mother. "Mrs. Waters, do you understand the impact of your actions?" She nodded quickly, tears threatening. "I didn't mean, I just thought she'd forgive me. She always does." That line, "she always does," cut deeper than anything else. Because she was right. He'll know. After the hearing ended, the judge announced her decision would be finalized within a week. As people began to stand, my mother reached out and touched my sleeve. "Marlene," she whispered, "can we talk outside?" I hesitated, then nodded once. Mr. Dalton gave me a reassuring look. "I'll meet you in the hall." Outside, the corridor was quiet except for footsteps echoing from another courtroom. My mother turned to me, clutching her purse. "You really hate me that much?" she said softly. I shook my head. "Hate isn't what this is. It's clarity." She blinked rapidly. "You've always been so cold when you're hurt. You think silence makes you strong, but it only makes you lonely." Her words might have stung once. Now they just sounded tired. "I'm not lonely," I said. "I'm finally at peace." Anna joined us then, irritation replacing her earlier bravado. "So what now? You get your stupid couch back and we pretend this never happened." I looked at her, the sister who'd grown up borrowing everything. My clothes, my books, even my mother's attention. "No," I said quietly. "We don't pretend anymore." She scoffed, turning away. "You'll regret this." I almost laughed. "You said that when I moved out, remember? But somehow I never did." She stormed down the hall, heels clicking angrily on the tile. My mother stayed behind, eyes on the floor. "I never wanted this," she murmured. "I know," I said. "You wanted control. You always did." She looked up, startled. "You used kindness like a leash," I continued. "Every favor, every gift, every piece of advice came with a price. You called it love, but it was ownership." Her eyes filled, but I didn't soften. "Love isn't supposed to cost someone their dignity," I said quietly. "I gave you every chance to understand that." She whispered, "I thought I was helping." I nodded slowly. "That's what makes it worse." Outside the courthouse, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and car exhaust. Clouds gathered above, gray and swollen. Mr. Dalton approached. "All done?" "Yes," I said. He nodded. "The paperwork's straightforward. You'll get confirmation soon." "Thank you." He gave a small smile. "You handled yourself with grace, Marlene. Not many people could." When he left, I stayed there on the steps for a while, watching the street lights flicker on as afternoon faded. The courthouse behind me loomed tall and quiet, a building made of rules and consequences. But what mattered most wasn't inside it. It was the silence between me and my mother, stretching wider than ever and somehow lighter too. She was still standing near her car when I walked past. "Mom," I said gently. She looked up. "I don't hate you," I said. "But I won't protect your mistakes anymore." For the first time she didn't argue. She just nodded, eyes shining with something that looked almost like understanding, or maybe loss. Then I turned and walked away. Each step felt deliberate, steady, final. That night, the house greeted me with its familiar quiet. The moldy couch was still there, but I didn't mind. I poured myself tea and sat down. The ticking clock filled the room, steady and sure. I thought of the courtroom, my mother's trembling voice, the look on Anna's face when she realized this time I wasn't bluffing. For years I believed forgiveness meant peace. Now I knew peace came from boundaries, firm ones even when they hurt. As I leaned back, thunder rolled somewhere far off, low and distant. Rain began tapping softly against the windows. The air smelled clean again, like something finally washed away. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed, the kind of deep, even breath that comes after years of holding it in. Because today, for the first time, my mother faced something she couldn't control. And I faced her, not with anger, not with tears, but with silence. That silence stayed with me as I closed the door that night. It filled every corner of the house, curling into the walls like smoke that refused to leave. I poured tea, set it on the table, and looked around the living room, at the stains on that couch, at the soft ticking of the clock, at the faint reflection of myself in the dark window. For months this room had been a wound. Now it was something else, a courtroom of my own. Every object had become testimony. Every shadow, every dent in the floor told a story of what I had allowed and what I finally stopped allowing. The rain hadn't stopped since I left the courthouse. It pattered gently on the roof, steady as my breath. I took the folder from the drawer, the same one that had started everything, and opened it one last time. The documents were still there, crisp, perfectly ordered. Receipts, emails, photographs, proof. But tonight I didn't need proof. I needed peace. That's when I decided, tomorrow I'd have the final word. Not in front of a judge, not in front of a crowd, but in the only way that mattered. Quietly. Personally. The next morning, sunlight pushed through gray clouds, soft and golden. The storm had passed. I made myself breakfast, fed the stray cat that liked to nap on my porch, and got dressed. I didn't wear navy or gray. I wore white, the color of clean slates, of endings that double as beginnings. I drove to my sister's house first. I parked on the opposite curb and sat for a moment, watching. The blinds were open. Through the window I could see my furniture. My couch, my rug, my table, all perfectly arranged like pieces in a display home. She was sitting there with her phone, laughing at something on the screen as if none of it had ever belonged to someone else. I didn't knock. Instead, I took my phone, opened my camera, and began recording from across the street. A simple 30-second video, clear as daylight. It wasn't for evidence this time, it was for closure. For myself. Then I drove away. My next stop was the courthouse again. Mr. Dalton was waiting in the lobby, holding a manila envelope. "Judge's ruling came through early," he said. "You won." The words should have felt triumphant. They didn't. They just felt quiet. He opened the envelope and handed me the signed judgment. Full restitution plus penalty. The court also ordered both defendants to reimburse legal fees. Enforcement starts in 10 days. 10 days. I nodded. "Thank you." He studied me carefully. "You know, most clients would celebrate right now." "I'm not most clients," I said. He smiled faintly. "No, you're not. You're something rarer, patient." When I stepped back outside, the air smelled clean, washed, renewed. I didn't need champagne or company. Justice didn't need applause. It just needed to exist. That evening I sat at my kitchen table again. The clock ticked behind me. The house was dim but peaceful. I pulled out a single sheet of paper and began to write. Not a letter but a notice. Read. "Dear Anna. The court has ordered the return of my property within 10 days. You may arrange pickup with the sheriff's office. Do not attempt to contact me directly. Consider this my final word. Marlene." I printed 2 copies, one for the court file, one to mail. Then, as I sealed the envelope, I remembered my mother's words at the courthouse. "You think silence makes you strong, but it only makes you lonely." He was wrong. My silence wasn't loneliness, it was armor. It was peace earned, not given. 2 days later, a knock sounded at my door. It wasn't angry this time. It was hesitant, almost fragile. I opened it to find my mother standing there alone, raincoat damp from a drizzle outside. She looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow, like time had finally caught up. "I brought you something," she said quietly, holding out a small box. I didn't take it. "What is it?" She opened it herself. Inside were a few photographs. Me and Anna as children sitting on the porch of our old house. In one of them, Mom was behind us, smiling, hands resting on our shoulders. "I thought maybe you'd forgotten these," she said. "I didn't forget," I replied. "I just stopped needing them to remind me of who I am." She nodded slowly. "I know. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for." There was no manipulation in her tone this time, no guilt, no sharp edge. Just weariness. Truth has a way of stripping people bare. "I read the ruling," she said softly. "It's fair." I raised an eyebrow. "That's not a word you've used often." She gave a faint smile. "Maybe I should have started sooner." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain outside softened, and somewhere down the street, wind chimes rang faintly. "Will you ever forgive me?" she asked. I thought about that, really thought. Forgiveness wasn't impossible. But it wasn't free either. "Forgiveness isn't forgetting," I said quietly. "It's remembering without needing revenge." She looked down, maybe realizing that I'd already taken the revenge she feared. And it hadn't required a scream, a scene, or a public collapse. Just silence, strategy, and time. When she left, she didn't hug me. She didn't try. She just nodded once, as if accepting the verdict life had finally handed her. A week passed. On the 10th day, a moving truck arrived outside my house. 2 men stepped out, polite and professional. "We're here to deliver a furniture set from Ms. Anna Waters," one said. I signed the form. They carried each piece back into my living room. The ivory sofa, the rug, the table, everything I had once lost. When they were done, I stood in the doorway and watched the light fall across the room. It didn't feel like it used to. Because these weren't symbols of comfort anymore. They were trophies, reminders that justice, when done quietly, can echo louder than shouting ever could. I didn't sit on the couch right away. I made tea, poured it into my favorite cup, and sat on the floor instead. From there, the furniture looked almost unfamiliar. Beautiful, yes, but also haunted by what it had cost. That night, I wrote in my notebook again. The page after "everything" in writing now had a new heading: "Everything resolved." I listed 3 lines beneath it. Respect restored. Control reclaimed. Kiss turned. I closed the notebook and placed it in a drawer. I didn't need it anymore. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. No gossip, no glances. Just the sound of crickets and the faint hum of streetlights. Somewhere down the road, my mother's porch light flicked off. Maybe she was sleeping for the first time in weeks. Maybe I was too. A few days later, Evelyn came by with muffins. She looked around my freshly restored living room, smiling. "Everything's back to normal," she said. I shook my head. "Not normal," I replied. "Better." She tilted her head. "You seem lighter." "I am." I smiled. I finally learned that some apologies don't need to be heard. They just need to be understood. Evelyn nodded slowly, though I could tell she didn't fully grasp what I meant. That was fine. Not every story needs retelling. Some victories belong only to the person who earned them. After she left, I opened the window. The breeze carried in the smell of cut grass and rain-soaked earth. My curtains swayed gently, brushing against the edge of the sofa. For the first time, I didn't feel resentment when I looked at it. Just peace. Later that evening, a letter arrived in the mail. A plain white envelope, handwriting I recognized instantly. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a short note from my mother. "I returned your furniture. But I know I can't return your trust. Maybe one day you'll let me try. Mom." I folded the note carefully and placed it inside my desk drawer. Not as evidence this time, but as closure. Then I stood, turned off the lights, and sat on the couch. The cushions were soft again, faintly smelling of new fabric cleaner and something else. Forgiveness maybe, or just freedom. The house was quiet except for the steady rhythm of rain against glass. I let it play its soft percussion, a song for endings that don't need applause. I thought about everything: the betrayal, the silence, the courtroom, the return. And somewhere between all of that, I realized something. Justice doesn't always need witnesses. It just needs courage. and the patience to let time do what anger never could. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and exhaled. For the first time, the silence in that room didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Sometimes justice doesn't need shouting, it only needs courage. If you believe every story deserves a voice, subscribe and join me for more true-to-life revenge stories that hit straight to the heart.